Hear ye, hear ye. It's your favorite N-word with another folklore piece. This time, I'll be talking about the invitations, pirateers. It's rare in this world when a child is abandoned by their father. Been a lovely time traveling to year 8124 for the most part, because humanity has been able to wash itself clean of most heinous acts. Unfortunate for the world, this abandonee is going to choose evil because of an evil person that chose to be evil again. This kind of capacity started being abolished in 2700, but Blackrose had to deal with the unfortunate task of surviving without a father figure. Mother tried to do so much for him, but with him being blessed with the double power gene, his life would become an inferno for the both of them. It all started when he was 5, when he was enrolled into a new school. He met a young Crunch, instantly became sworn enemies, because Crunch was hunky-dory and Blackrose was simply not. Immediate with the hate against anyone friendly was his mantra, because he was missing somebody to look up to. Eventually, he would develop an extreme, deep-down bodied thirst persona of leave me the fuck alone. Crunch was incessant with the kindness, just trying to be friendly literally turned another day in life into a fiery hell. After burning about 4 classes with an explosion, he had to start wearing a brace, a black one with crisscrossed etchings around it and a solid red inside. Knowing from that moment he'd have to bide his time until he can be what's in his body. That waiting every day until he can take it off when he got home created more of what's in his body. So many days until he hit puberty. So many days until he could control what's in his body. Those explosions of rage happened every now and then, but a saving grace came his way. Forced to endure homeschooling from 9 on up allowed for his natural state of rage to subside for a long time. Yet, he could see the life Crunch was having. Both parents are superheroes. His mother doesn't use her powers, and no telling what his father is up to. He wanted what so many people were having, more so Crunch over everyone else. Couldn't go anywhere in Tinville without Crunch's family being mentioned, especially after Crunch saved Tinville when scientists found an old civilization way under its grounds. It was in how Crunch saved lives and was able to get everyone resurrected during a freak accident. He wanted to have that kind of control from the jump to the point he had the idea of making a super being league, way before Crunch even announced his. By the time he got to junior high, he could use his powers in a way that was therapeutic because he could explode into fire at any given moment from then on. Psycho back in school had him meeting children from other districts. Friends. He was able to make his first friends with guys that had the same circumstance of no good males procreating instead of escorting. All of them had chips on their shoulders. All of them got along though. In turn, guided Blackrose to be involved with more of humanity, becoming a wrestler, rugger, basketballer, and developing a desire to become a doctor. It seemed like all he needed was people he could relate to, people who were destined to be mighty too, but their Crunch was, being a better wrestler, rugger, and basketballer than him. Again and again, as their rivalry grew in more blood. School fights, neighborhood fights, town fights, and city fights, every now and then, showing who could be the bigger enemy. They were going through so much drama, you would think they went to high schools of 90210, Ravenswood, Vampire Academy, Hellcats, Gossip Girl, The Secret Circle, Booksmart, and Euphoria at the same time. In and out of galaxies, dimensions, and Exevor, as if Blackrose had the same I know everybody capacity that Crunch has. With friends like Dead Rex, Gadov, Egono, Exevor, and Trench, he had a connection that would get him to everywhere in the sea of stars. An astronomy wielder, a sorcerer, a Tetra wielder, and an earth dragon. With him being a fire and Behemoth wielder, they had a protection a young group of super beings need. When he wasn't raging it up in school, he was always somewhere where the power be. All of those boys may have not had a father, but their mothers made things happen for them. Things of the unknown. While they were at school or adventuring, they were sacrificing a lot of things so they can have what they wanted. Terrible shifts of a long time, several ins and outs with the super being surveillance program on top of barely seeing their sons. You should ask who was raising them. The streets, the meadows, the metropolises, the places in the skies, the colonies, and the battlefields were raising them. Getting harder and harder throughout the weeks was showing how the mothers were disconnecting from them. They didn't have anything to worry about. The main thing the five guys had in common was somehow, some way, making a safe haven for any child that doesn't have both of their parents. His desires of making a super being league came from a neutral place. Blackrose knows pain from a place of not having both of his parents. That pain can turn into sadness. In his and his friends' cases, it turned into anger, turned into rage, turned into being a fortified machine so they can gather kids and give them a life of attention they need. The bane of his existence had everything. Other banes of his existence had everything, equating the people that brought him here to everything. He was 16 when he saw his father for the first time. All the times he wished he could hug him, have a conversation with him, hear him say his name, hear him call him son, to shout at him, to scream at him. None of it he could do, as his father never looked his way to even see if he would recognize him. As he got older, other things began being added to that list. A long hop until the what he couldn't do became what he could have done. What he couldn't do turned his rage into a brawl with Crunch that was evenly matched between them, but nothing in their paths could stand a chance. Almost an exact year after he saw his father in the flesh for the first time. They were both having a bad day. Blackrose was leaving the cafeteria. Crunch was entering it. They saw each other from so many feet away, but both of them were already mean-mugging. The rugby game over the weekend was ruled as the team that didn't play as a team. Blackrose pointed at Crunch, then gave him a thumbs down. Then Crunch swung on him. He dodged, and everyone made a huge-ass circle because they had become accustomed to these two brawling. For real. On school grounds, their whole powers came out. Their whole school was in jeopardy. Two very advanced in the membranes when it comes to using powers, super beings, saw the switch and powered it all the way on. Riot alarms went off because of what they did. Their whole city had a field day because of what they did. The entire high school had to be closed down and built up again. Because of what they did, Blackrose leaned towards being a villain. Had to be sedated by adult super beings because he was so chaotically mad that without knocking him out, they would have had to kill him. Upon waking up hours later, he simply opened his eyes from the nightmare he was enduring. The whole time, all he saw in his crosshairs were the multiple ways he could kill his father. He rose out of the bed like a crazy person, removed the covers, then walked to the window. His mother was about to walk in. He began to set himself on fire so he could walk through the glass and fly home. But he heard her voice, then powered down. He simply asked, "Please, tell me where my father is, the exact location." His father died later that day. Blackrose was incarcerated later that day, in custody, as silent as the calm after a storm be. Entire being as stoic as possible, peaceful in his head, dead look upon his face as he followed every direction and went with everything he had to. In his cell, he simply bided his time, day in and day out, doing nothing but push-ups, then laying down flat on his back with his eyes closed the rest of the time, biding his time until he can see his friends again. His mother came to pick him up. Upon his release a year later, he gave her a warm hug. She cried a little bit, then took him to a new restaurant to have him feeling the new beginnings. That conversation turned into him having to go to the Super Being Surveillance Program because he simply needed to make money, to pay his mother back for the legal fees, fines, and repair bills of the school. The scientists and doctors there didn't want his unchecked rage out in the battlefield or even in a lab yet. He was first asked to go into the hyperbolic chamber and see if he can replicate the rage that fucked up their high school so much. He did it immediately, as if he didn't leave that angry place since the year he had to endure for killing his father. There it was, though, all of that immense power he summoned to make sure Crunch didn't freeze him to death. All of the scientists and doctors there applauded him, told him there's an exact check amount that matches the legal fees, fines, and repair bills his mother had to endure. He asked, "What do I have to do to get that?" Learn how to turn things that can't be set aflame on fire. They helped push an 18-year-old super being capabilities to a place so he could do that. It was grueling, very grueling, bleeding out grueling, vessel damaging grueling. Everything hurt for a good 7 months, and I mean absolutely everything. Blinking, turning his head, Walking, breathing, being alive hurt for a long time for him. Every day, trying to make his rage worlds more powerful to turn anything into fire he could bend. With the direction of the scientists, doctors, and healers, he saw something in his spirit grid, something in a direction a high amount of fire would simply ignore. The calling started every time he would meditate some of the pain away that doctors couldn't take away. The closer he would get to that zone of his spirit grid, the louder the calling would get. Then the day happened, he ventured into the reality segment of his fire abilities. He chose that direction, and there it was, silence. He was where the direction was taking him. Went to the program that day, ear-to-ear smile, something they've never seen him do. That day was his day. Disregard the reality around fire that needs oxygen. He had them roll heavy balls in his direction. He turned all of those bowling ball-like balls into rolling fireballs that eventually left the ground because they turned into fire. Even with the trail of fire, they floated and went into his being as if it was nothing. The data they feasted on. It was a miraculous day for the program, but even more miraculous for Blackrose, one of the doctors, Dr. Garzo. Very handsome, daddy bear type of a man that looks like he can drag spaceships across solid grounds without wheels. That boy had a crush on that doctor. That doctor was known for giving out black roses as a job well done whenever something great happened. It was when he started calling himself Black Rose. He was proud of himself as he took the ribbon off of a black rose to hold it between two fingers, between two thorns. Then put the bottom of the stem on his free index finger, powered up to make it stand up still in front of him. As he powered up enough to turn a black rose into fire, he counted this blessing, then watched the black rose burn. The entirety of it was on fire, every single detail, but it wasn't blazing, it was simmering. Then it started descending into his index finger till the bloom was the last thing left. It exploded beautifully. Then he turned back into flesh from their fingertip down to his toes. It was a sight for sore eyes, as anyone around could see it. Later in that year, the first invitations went out. After securing the funds the program promised him, he spent all of that on a spaceship for living, adventuring, traveling, and security. One with the amenities of race-line engines, top shelf, a hyperbolic time chamber, a super beam training facility, forming type cafeteria, F-50 space Gundam deck, one space for a size 1 spaceship, a mirror size 1 spaceship, 3 size 5 spaceship vaults, command deck, piloting corridor, warship force field capacitors, a spaceship artificial intelligence component, as known as Dr. Garzo, laser turret defense and offense system, ray turret defense and offense system, matter turret defense and offense system, FTL jump system, around the ship viewing deck, 7 decks worth of civilian space, hospital quality barracks decks, super beam quality hospital sector, super beam quality fringe bunker, a superpower chamber, and an exotic materials engine. Chrome black and red exterior with a candy-coated interior of all kinds of reds, whites, and blacks. Looked as if it was executive made from the bottom to the top. He named the spaceship the Region. Dead Rex, Gadov, Egono, Exevor, and Trench marveled at the all-black invitations. When they opened theirs, they had the address of the spaceport north to Tinville. Didn't know who they were from until they saw Blackrose at the spaceport. He gave them all a hug and even told them that's the only one he has in him. Told them that they have to make a better world for the children that are left behind. That meant going against the machine, the Utopias, and even hit listing all of the parents that walked away. For the atrocities he has endured all of his life shouldn't be exampled through another. All of them agreed, angrily agreed, and put hands on top of one another. On 3, they were told to say their invitations as they look up. From that moment on, their home was in the skies, in the sea of stars as they hunted down children to give them a better life. Even hired a procured team of psychiatrists, psychologists, aerologists, and pediatricians, until he had the knowledge to practice pediatrician himself, in and out of the battlefield as much as he was in and out of classrooms. knowing every day that the void in his spirits will never be filled, but looking forward to filling that void in the innocence. It was quite noble. But once you kill a man, you're a killer. Notices around the stars dealt with how he would take the children and have them raised in actual care, giving the opportunity to the parent that stayed behind if they were still there, giving him a society of people that will become loyal to him eventually. But first, he had to build a round table to ensure his entire lifespan is devoted to saving the innocents by any means necessary. The original 5 of the invitations filled the positions of Under King, Head of Operations, Head of Magic, and Head of Forming. First of the invitations roundtable, Blackrose, age 19, and all of the ages will indicate when he met them. Of Jamaican descent, his whole life, he needed to fight, so he could become strong enough to become a beacon of innocence. Couldn't put those words together when he was a kid, but he has always aimed for being who he needed while growing up. Whole father was beyond absentee, was even absentee to other kids. He eventually made it to his brother and 2 sisters. They were even proud of his accomplishments, but it took them some time to get over him killing their father and how he did it. They saw no qualms with what he was doing with his life. They happily jumped on board to help right the wrongs that society hasn't fleshed all the way out yet. With force. Everyone, with force. Saw that force in his eyes from 19 on up. He's able to smile nowadays. From giving kids a new reason to laugh and smile, he will grow into a healed heart eventually. That just made his fire stronger. 'Cause he has a whole family of thousands to take care of, for future's sake. Looking into the future wasn't an option, but all he kept telling the adults, our realization of happiness goes nowhere if the kids aren't protected. He became the business of liberating children, and not a single entity likes that. For the army of his evil has grown a lot and isn't looking great for the superhero guild in the next 20 years. He is the king of the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class 1-man army villain, Annihilation villain, Sanctuary villain, and licensed pediatrician. His superpower is Fire Behemoth. Second of the Invitations Roundtable, Dead Rex, ages 13 to 19. Of African-British descent, he gets his code name from ending lives. Way before he started doing it, he was just regularly angry. His daddy issues dealt with looking exactly like his father and how he never wanted anything to do with him. Majority of that dealt with him trying to figure out a way to watch his superpower genetics. He had several children with women that agreed to terminate the pregnancy if the superpower genetics weren't washed out. He directly affected several lives, even those that were hip to using their high-octane powers for the betterment of society. Their pristine superpower genetics didn't wash his out though, so they were left with terminating or not. Unlike his father, he felt no disdain towards having this remarkable superpower, but his superpower is best suited for killing. How can anyone get away with killing without a license to kill? His whole youth was devoted to acquiring a contract with the super being surveillance programs. Even that was a long road, for he developed patience unlike his friends. To practice his powers for real, he had to wait until the programs. His first kill awoke the beast within. Then, he killed his father when he was 18, zombifying his body turned an already hardened super being to an omega level. Been a great body snatcher for villainkind since. He's the underking of the Invitations Pirateers. Galactic Class 1-man army villain, Annihilation villain, Gunman, and Helper villain. His superpower is Zombie Tyrannosaurus Rex. Third of the Invitations Roundtable, Gadov Egono, 13 through 19. Of Senegalese descent, hailing from Coven, Rek Iraz. Through his mother, unfortunate for him, his father didn't know about the spellbinding side of his mother. When she finally told him, he dipped. 3 years of handling a baby Gadov, father issues were rooted in lovey-dovey things that deal with a true bond. Out of spite, his spellbinding might develop to a mega status sooner rather than later. Before he would make that status, he had to deal with his father becoming a witch hunter. Yeah. But he had protection. If it wasn't for his friends, he might have not survived that scenario. His mother didn't, so he had to take his father's life. That's what drove him to Omega status, dealing with psychic powers so he knows all witch hunters way before they strike. He would deal with constantly thinking he could have prevented his mother's death for a lifetime. That developed a way for him to watch the machines that enforce the Utopia protocol. His spells are so powerful, he can lock in on the movements of witch hunters through connecting to the machines. Been a terror to witch hunters since, and any organization holding any will routinely be wiped out by him, even if he has to disappear from the schedule of the invitations. Head of Magic of the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class One-Man Army White Mage of Coven Wreck-Erase, Supervillain, Interrogation Specialist, and Helper Villain. His superpower is Sorcery with the categories of Life, Ray, Psychic, and Dimension. Fourth of the Invitations Roundtable, Exevor, 13 through 19. Of Iranian descent, blessed with Tetra as a superpower. Categories were the famous four combination of earth, wind, water, and fire. A prized child to be he was, but his father didn't stick around. Didn't want to. No matter how much he tried to convince the mother to terminate the pregnancy, he learned a lesson about being a player. She had him hemmed up. Instead of telling her son the truth, he lived a long childhood of resenting the father that was never around, cause she killed him. That man was spaced. Had a whole goon squad on his spaceship. The one he hopped on to move galaxies. Yeah, he was trying to be a Trek star, but he got trekked to be with the stars. Airlocked, then frozen with the immediate to be gone forever. Didn't care at the time she was doing it, but had a good hard cry when the confirmation came in. Exevor lived with the lie until his fathers started to kill their fathers. Once his anger was calmed and he understood why she did it, via Gadov and his psychic spells, he simply loved his mother more. The truth set him free. Free right into Omega status. Without the burden of an ain't shit man cleared up, his headspace allowed him to fine-tune his powers. It was all the serene he ever needed, and he didn't know until. He's the head of operations of the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class One-Man Army Villain, Strategist, and Gunman. Superpower is Tetra, with the categories of Earth, Wind, Water, and Fire. Fifth of the Invitations Roundtable, Trench, 13 through 19, of African descent, eventually growing into the sentiment of, I'm a dragon, and he still left him mean. It got even worse when he could finally hybrid transform. His emerging from the white glow as a golden dragon solidified that he is indeed special. That also made him aphasic. He will only communicate in grunts, head nods, and shakes. His trauma is mostly self-inflicted, even with his mother trying to instill in him self-esteem. He just wasn't receiving it. Couldn't even take a compliment from his friends, but they never pestered him too much about not talking. They just know it revolves around his father, per the very small amounts of texting he does. His aphasia was cured when his friends started to kill their fathers. He could see the weight of depression leave their vessels once they wrote a wrong. He met his father when he was 19, simply asked him, Are you Craig Donovan Vance? Idiot responded before he saw a face that looked like his. In broad daylight, Trench rose his hand and put it on his chest. His insides began to turn into sand, dirt, rock, and gold. Then a circle below him started to form, and he started to sink as if it was quicksand. He began coughing up dirt as he grabbed his son's arm, but nothing, not even the innocent people standing by trying to get him to let go, could do anything. His father was going into the ground. Trench went with him. Went down miles, actually, to not be seen from for a few days. Being buried alive had a new meaning at this time, but he buried all of those feelings. It was the first time his friends could hear his voice clearly. Head of forming of the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class One-Man Army Villain and Annihilation Villain. His superpower is Earth Dragon. Sixth of the Invitations Roundtable, Ye Ajesai, age 20, of Jamaican descent, is a proud member of Coven Wreck-Erase, out of Galaxy 5. Her circumstances of being without a father is the same as the fellas. Lives an entire life out of touch with lies to the point she keeps a lie detecting spell on deck. Passively at all times, but turns aggressive the second a lie could jeopardize the lives of innocents. When the invitations were created, Gadov told Blackrose about her. She received an invitation because there will need to be female representation on the round table. Another spellbinder is massively important, but it's a magical might that made her stand out immediately. A queen of resurrecting is what she wants to be known for. But that's it, because healing people is something she'll pass on a regular basis. For those in need or ones like her. Pegasus allows for a heavenly connection. Bringing a holy category in makes her more of a white mage than Gadov. It's in the death and vegetation powers that made the fellows arch one eyebrow. Her dossier, at 20, simply showed someone who can pinpoint dangers from a distance. Homegirl has sage in her perfume for a reason, and her kiss with the angel of death makes her one hell of a radar. Head of Customs of the Invitations Pirateers. Galactic Class 1 Woman Army Green Major Coven Rake Arise. Galactic Class 1 Woman Army Valina and Sanctuary Valina. Her superpower is Sorcery, with the categories of Pegasus, Holy, Death, and Vegetation. 7th of the Invitations Roundtable. Candyland. Age 22. Of Nubian descent. Raised by her mother until she was 9. Became an orphan. There was no one around to resurrect her. Had to be raised by the streets in a third world country kind of place. Fending for herself was her norm from 9 on up, but every now and then, impressing the right people to learn about all things Errol. Junior high was when she met a guidance counselor by the name of Big Candy. Always had a bowl full of candy in her office, even after a full day of guiding. She was able to get Candyland in a summer camp that turned her mindset into a very positive one. One that first gave her the inkling of being Candyland, especially when she learned that her gorgeous body of chocolate can fascinate everyone. From strangers, from compliments, from adventures, to understanding that she has an opportunity to be as powerful as those that have been paraphrased with unparaphrased their entire lives. Upon graduating high school, she went into the mercenary business and had it guised by being a tremendous voyeur, had so much candy spreading across the web that she was in everyone's business. The bulletin boards became her main employer, and being a hoe was just the added flavor. She was given an invite when Exevor saw her on cam for the first time. He saw something in the background that ordinary people would never have in their homes. A legendary weapon. Was in that chat room trying to get her attention, but that 1 million private chat invite changed Candyland's life. She's the head of population of the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class Bounty Huntress, and X-rated entertainer. Her superpower is Matism Ray, with the form of Lamborghini. And yes, Exevor was able to make Candyland his boo. Didn't mind her whole occupation either. 8th of the Invitations Roundtable. Spaces. 25. Of Jamaican descent. Enduring a whole lot of void her life. A whole lot. All of the lot that's out there. Her superpower is Kyogen Rival. Means she's a zoanthrope of the eyeball tentacle monsters, and she will be a wielder of literal space. As soon as she could hybrid transform, she teleported out of her space colony to fill the void. The real void. A void that cannot kill Kyogens because that's their natural habitat. The code to her filled the void that has haunted her since her father's disappearance. It took her 25 years to catch wind of other fatherless victims, making good use out of their depressive life. Did what she had to do to get the supervillain guild to get her in front of Blackrose. It was odd, because Blackrose was always looking for someone like her to fill the void of the round table that would fix traveling of how they got around. For a Kyogen wielder, has a natural compass when they feel out of space. To keep them from being lost in space is what she means to them, but she can lose a whole lot of people out there. All it takes is one tentacle to get a firm grip on someone, then she'll yeet that person right out there. Head of Travel for the Invitations Pirateers, Galactic Class 1 Woman Army Valina, and Assassin. Her superpower is Kyogen Rival. 9th of the Invitations Roundtable. Colossia, age 25, of Japanese descent, a whole complete orphan from the jump. Her life happens to be the most positive out of this group. She was always taken care of, but she dead ass never knew of anyone that had lost either parents. Grew up in a very prestigious area of the Sea of Stars. Grew up a Gundam pilot to be. Developing friendships with artificial intelligence was how she filled her void. From 10 on, she could talk to somebody about the lack of things that was happening in her life. Disregarding the kids that never left her behind, artificial intelligence knows they were just created. They don't have real parents either. It's something that made her into an over-exemplary Gundam pilot by the time she was 17. Even though she was never out in the actual field, killing monsters or suppressing fleets on ground or space colonies, she was able to maneuver Gundams in ways only her brain thought of. The nanotechnology that seeps into pilots gives them a neural link to Gundams, but Colossia did more than just accept the nanotechnology. So by the time she got her first contract, she was regarded as a pilot that may never lose a Gundam. Commander Ocelot Gray put in a bill to have her special Gundam created that would fit with her powers and her physical form perfectly. It was already drawn up in one of her diaries, but when he got a hold of it, he made it happen. It was deemed the best gift she has ever received until she got an invite from Blackrose. Close to when Spaces was given an invitation, he thought he had asked the supervillain guild to send him people that would fill the rest of his roundtable for elite positions. She was the first and grew immediately to consider these people her family. She's the head of technology of the Invitation's Pirateers, Galactic-class Gundam pilot and tech guru. Her superpower is Hell. Her Gundam is named Colossia Gray, named after what she wrote in her diaries. 10th and 11th of the Invitation's Roundtable, Professor Next and Dr. Carmela, age 25, each. Of Caribbean descent, the both of them, inseparable for the main reason that they grew up in the same neighborhood and had amazing mothers. Instilled in them a lot of softness for a hard life to live. It was normal for them to like each other, fall for each other, and protect each other. JoJo's Homeboy would best describe their relationship. It's a song, go listen to it. Those street fights didn't teach them none, but the mother saw the violence become a recurring theme. They were able to send them to a doctorate summer camp. They were 13 at that time. They were inspired at that time. Something gave them humility during that camp. It was a huge example of softness for them. Sorcerers other than our mothers, so they started believing what they said. They believed their lives would be better if they were doctors, to help fill that void their absentee fathers left. They met Blackrose when he was 24, all of them in college for doctorate reasons. Carmela knew it was Blackrose because he was a house-held name by then. He told them the truth about things and what he'd like to do. They became nosy with him for a whole year, and because of who they were as people, on top of super beings, the supervillain guild said, why not? Blackrose had a double spit take when he read their dossiers, but had a quadruple spit take when he read their histories. To him, they sounded like the most soft people who grew up with a single parent, but also are highly noted level 5 super beings. Professor Next, head of education of the Invitation Pirateers, Galactic-class psychologist, epistemologist, and philosopher. His superpower is astronomy. Dr. Carmela. She's the head of medicine of the Invitation's Pirateers, Galactic-class biologist, pediatrician, and aerologist. Her superpower is rabbit of life. 12th of the Invitation's Roundtable, Davina Ray, age 25, of Honduran descent, from space colony Ritox, one of the very few space colonies not on the map. Sometimes big old secrets like an unmapped space colony go by unnoticed for a long time. Goes by with the old world order untouched. Female surviving here is hardcore. Davina had her share of traumatic battles she has had to overcome, but the biggest was learning she's an actual super being. All of the population there is highly controlled under the false pretenses of Catholicism. Now that your head is in the right place, say hey to Davina Ray, the one who got the space colony destroyed, and has been on a warpath of making sure the galactic forces do what they are supposed to be fucking doing. Her rap sheet was glorious to the supervillain guild, but more so glorious to Blackrose, cause she showed signs of killing regardless of the outcome. He likes it when people go for the greater evil and take out the target by any means necessary. When she told him about blowing up her home, She told him that her target was her father. Even though her mother tried her best and gave her the best thing possible, a sense of self-worth, she was deemed a target too for letting a nigga like her father procreate under false pretenses. She's the head of food of the Invitation's pirateers, Galactic Class Gundam pilot, Annihilation villain, and assassin. Her superpower is culinary. Last but not least, the 13th of the Invitation's roundtable, Vol Dragor. Age 27 is when he met him. He is definitely not 27, because you're about to find out that he's a shadow being that looks as if he's of African Inuit descent, hails from the deep down caverns of Exevor, where the shadows live, where everything is so dark you would be amazed that they have amusement parks. What you can't see is not in your mind, but they know a whole lot of things about beings that live in light. To make the longest story short, the Invitations were given a gift from the vault of the main headquarters of the Supervillain Guild, and I'm not telling you where it's located. As the 12 of the round table got access to this dimension, they were standing in front of a long table with their names over plates. They were asked to enjoy a feast while they are given the verbal accounts of a secretive mission. They were told about the underground life of Egema because they were chosen to go there to receive something, when all they had to do was just show up at the location so they can help an elder guide enjoy his journey throughout the real world. Vol Dragor came out of the mouth of the underground cavern looking like the red shadow he is. He looked at all 12 of the humans that were sent to receive him and choose a combined version of what they looked like. Been donning that humanoid fit since Blackrose met him at the age of 27. Been a secret weapon of these pirateers since, cause the Supervillain Guild saw the unity in the Invitations. They are a prized, coveted bunch of super beings that will bring glory to villains of all kinds. To ensure it with as little obstacles as possible, they gave them the next Elder Shadow to leave Exevor. He's the secret weapon of the Invitation's pirateers. His words: "After a month, I'm sticking with y'all cause y'all the shit. Left my paradise of darkness to be shown a paradise of light. I like that. All of my weapons are yours now. All of y'all." His superpower is the sword of the universe. Vol Dragor may wear glasses, but that's his cheat sheet to his inventory. Been alive for so many millennia that he better have a cachet of goddammits. By the tons. Has given them all weapons to help them survive the test of the battlefield against all of their nemesis. And acts very weirded out whenever they try to battle him as if he's a king. It's always hilarious cause his whole persona changes to bashful. Y'all need to stop, cause that's who I not be. They all tried bowing to him once, but the hug he gave them afterwards gave them a sense of, don't do that shit again. To be given a guide was something all of them had to talk about eventually. They went from kids in a single-parent home, raised with so much love and so much negligence. But what the Supervillain Guild did for them, bought their loyalty. They've had a long time of being taken serious, but it was the gift of extra protection that finally made a void null. The solidification of Vol Dragor choosing to stay with them fulfilled the round table. To celebrate all of his comrades and showing the actual round table to the inhabitants of his giant spaceship. He got with a god culinarist via Divina Ray, the one that helped her get her godlike recipes, so she could escape and end that hellhole of a space colony. Leno Chai made it so that the deepest fires in Blackrose's heart could be turned into edible flames in the shape of wine. As everyone held up giant, deep wine glasses filled with liquid fire, their faces were lit. During the speech, their eyes were lit. After the speech, their lips were lit, then their entire vessels were lit. Blackrose's dream supervillain league was complete and had been helping to exact revenge for countless left-behind children. And I'm out. Now, if you're ever thinking that I have daddy issues, I don't. This was a character made up, all right? My daddy issues have always been non-existent. So, all of this stuff that I just told you about the Invitation's pirateers is fiction. All right? It's your favorite N-word. Time to go keep it peaceful and enjoy a 3-day weekend. Because this when I recorded this. But hopefully, 2023 isn't shanking you. Now, Go on and keep it peaceful. Mwah.